Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beyond Energetics. Sarah here, and today we are going to talk about pattern interruption and how when we do this we can heal the lineage that keeps repeating in our lives generation to generation. So let's get comfy cozy and dive in. So there comes a moment in every healing journey when you realize you aren't just healing yourself. You're interrupting a pattern that has been moving through generations. The anxiety that never belonged to you, the survival your grandmother carried, the silence your mother inherited. Maybe the fear that became normal in your life wasn't actually yours. And what if your life isn't a straight line moving from past to future? What if your life is more like a landscape? Imagine yourself standing on a hilltop looking out over the vast landscape before you. What if that represented your life? And every version of you already exists as possibility. The question isn't how do I become her? The question is what keeps me returning to the old coordinates? One of the biggest misconceptions in healing is believing that we have to fight our patterns, believing that there is a beginning and an end. Healing isn't about fixing what is already happening in our lives. It's not about getting better per se. There's nothing wrong with us. We are whole already. But when we're looking at working with generational patterning, we also need to understand that these patterns aren't our enemies. They're intelligent adaptations that we've brought into our lives in some capacity through inherited wounding. They're your nervous system's way of keeping you connected to a family story. Now, in untangling this program, I do one-to-one, either in one individual session or over a 3 months deep dive. We don't shame the pattern. We become curious about it. I call it putting on our Nancy Drew hats. And I do this, and we do this together because every repetitive relationship, every financial struggle, every circle of burnout, and every inability to receive often began long before you were even born. The womb is our first environment. Our mother's nervous system became our first language. Her stress, her joy, her grief, her hormones, her beliefs about safety. Our cells listened to this language of our mother and our mother before, or your grandmother, before we even took our first breath. Then we inherited generations of stories that said, stay small, don't speak, work harder, love means sacrifice, survival comes first. So when people ask, why do I keep repeating this? Why do I keep dating the same person or losing my money over and over again? The better question becomes, what loyalty am I unconsciously living? Your healing begins the moment we interrupt the automatic response. The automatic response to everything around us that comes into our periphery. And we do this not by forcing change, but by simply noticing. In that moment, pause, stop, what is here? Every time you pause instead of react, or every time you pause after you react, because you're now aware of the pattern, the reaction. Every time you breathe instead of abandoning yourself, and every time you choose compassion instead of criticism, you've stepped outside of this inherited loop. That tiny moment that you pause, hit the stop button, is extremely profound. Because you've moved from unconscious repetition into conscious creation. Woo! I just got a surge of energy all the way up my body. So I'm going to repeat that again. That tiny moment of profound pause lets you know that you've stepped outside of the inherited loop. And when you step outside of the inherited loop, that tiny moment is profound because you've moved from unconscious repetition into conscious creation. And that's what pattern interruption really is. It's not because something or someone new has come in and told you this is how you do something. That moment is profound because it's remembering who you were before survival became your identity. And let me move into that a little bit more. So the one thing I invite my clients to imagine is what if your life isn't unfolding in a straight line, right? What if healing isn't about chasing the future version of yourself, your dreams, desires, your wants? What if instead it's standing in that vast landscape, in that field on top of that hill, and all around you are countless possibilities of how your life could unfold? One path that you see before you may be shaped by fear. And maybe that fear is actually inherited. And maybe another pathway may be about trust. One might be by overgiving. Another one might be healthy boundaries. Or one might be scarcity. Another one might be abundance. Each path that stands before you becomes more available to you depending on the choices you make every single day, every single moment. The choices you practice repeatedly become the path you begin to walk on. And whether you think of these things as timelines or possibilities or simply new habits supported by your nervous system, the invitation is the same. You don't have to stay on the path that was handed to you or the path that you've been already walking. You get to choose your destination. Remember those choose your own adventure books that we maybe read in public school? I know they were a big thing for me in the 4th grade. Choose your own adventure. You get to do that with your life. So let's circle back to that piece I said about pattern interruption and how remembering who you were before survival possibly has become your identity. So one thing that happens is for a lot of people, especially those who have been carrying generational or nervous system level trauma, survival isn't something that just happened to them once. It became the operating system that they grew up living in. So when you grow up or live through a period where staying safe, staying useful, staying agreeable, or even staying in control was the price of okayness, of safety, the nervous system begins to not just learn this behavior, it learns this as an identity. I am someone who fixes things. I am someone who doesn't need much. I am someone who holds it all together. And over time, that stops feeling like a strategy of survival and it starts feeling like who you are. Now, these traits usually got built before you or an individual might have had enough self to choose them. And what I mean by that is that a child doesn't decide, I'm going to become hyper independent or hyper vigilant or a people pleaser. The nervous system adapts to what has kept them safe, what has kept you safe. And the personality then forms around the adaptation of what they needed to stay safe in their environment. So that self that shows up as an adult is often a survival structure wearing the name of an identity. So when we speak about remembering who we were before, it's not about regressing to childhood. It's about noticing the traits and the roles that were strategy to stay safe, but maybe not truth. So just getting curious about what's underneath them, not fixing them. Remember, we're not fixing anything. We don't need to be fixed. We don't need to tear them down. Just simply asking, if I didn't need this to survive this way anymore, what would still be here? If I didn't need to be hyper vigilant, how would I be? Who would I be? So a lot of us build our whole personality around staying safe. And I just got that full body shiver again, right? Being the strong one, the easy one, the one who doesn't need anything. That wasn't who you were. Let me make this very clear, that was who you had to become. And somewhere along the line, that strategy started calling itself your identity. But this isn't about tearing her down, tearing him down, tearing you down, that identity. It was there for a purpose. It was there to keep you safe, and it worked. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But underneath of that version of you that learned to survive, there's a version that never had to. And wouldn't it be lovely to reconnect with that person, that version? So remembering her isn't about going backwards. It's about finally asking, if I didn't have to survive this way anymore, who would I be? And that's the work that we do in Untangling. Again, I'll drop some information in the show notes or in the link in this podcast episode so you can go deeper. And if you're curious, you can investigate and connect with me about that untangling work. But this is the work that is not about becoming someone new. It's remembering who was always there. And that's super important in the work we're doing. So the one thing I do with clients is, we go into the untangling. We go into the returning to that womb space. Not because we're trying to relive trauma, but because we're remembering our first imprint. Before words, before being able to speak and know right from wrong, there was sensations. Before beliefs, there was feelings. And before your identity, there was resonance. And the womb is how your nervous system responds and gently revisit where your body first learned, is this world safe? Am I wanted? Do I belong? Can I relax? Those early impressions don't define you for forever, but they can influence how your nervous system responds until they're brought into awareness and gently reshaped through the healing processes or experiences. When we reconnect with that earliest place, we aren't going backwards. We're not going backwards. Instead, we're actually closing the gap, not as a magical skipping of time way, but as a new foundation. We're closing the gap so that we can better understand ourselves. So I like to think of closing the gap not as skipping timelines, right? But as reducing the distance between who you are today and the qualities you want to embody. So your nervous system changes through repeated experiences. That we know is true. And the other thing we know is that visualization can actually help yourself get to those points and those places and those things you want to embody, because it helps your brain vividly imagine experiences in a way that can overlap with the real ones. And when your brain does this, it responds very well to the imagined reality. So well, in fact, that it can start to create your personal reality through the imagery, through the sensations, through the repetition alone. So instead of asking yourself, what do I want? What if you asked yourself, how does that version of me feel? How does she breathe? How does she walk? How does she make decisions, receive loss, rest, trust? When we start to feel those things about a desired place of being, we're able to bring it into reality that much quicker. And when you consistently practice through repetition, going to those inner states, and Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this all the time, is creating your current reality through manifestation, through feeling, seeing, sensing, being in that future state. Your choices of how you want to feel, see, sense, be will begin to align with those which you desire. You're literally shifting which path you're on. You have that possibility to shift your reality through frequency, through vibration. This is what we call the vibrational bridge. And whether you call it vibration or frequency or embodiment or nervous system regulation, the bridge is consistent. It's staying connected to the version of yourself you are becoming, but also before your external life fully reflects it. So when we are able to tap into that vibrational state, we are putting our place in a vibrational frequency or an embodiment or a state of regulation that matches the frequency of that which we want to be or where we want to be. So your internal life is now going to start reflecting externally, not by pretending, rather everything is perfect, and not by bypassing pain, but by refusing to let temporary circumstances define your identity. So you can acknowledge the grief, and you can do that while still choosing hope. Even though I am experiencing this grief, I am still hopeful. ... You can feel fear while taking courageous steps, even though being seen terrifies me. I know I'm going to be okay and I can do this. That is the bridge, stepping forward into maybe a reality or a possibility that is unfamiliar to you, yet knowing that you are going to be okay. Stepping forward in fear, doing it anyways. Resistance that you feel in your body is actually information. It's not failure. It's information. And when part of us believes that if I change, if I lose belonging, if I become stressful, if I do this, I'll outgrow my family, or if I do this, I'll become so peaceful. Who am I without the struggle? When we start to create those narratives in our mind, what we can do here to reframe is to offer ourselves compassion. Not slap ourselves on the wrist, not shame ourselves for having those fears and those thoughts, but showing up with compassion for ourselves. Because when we do these things, when we have those thoughts pop into our mind and feel them in our body, it's usually ourself trying to protect an old version of us. It's trying to protect an older version of you, and healing isn't about eliminating that part. It's about helping it to realize that the present is different from the past, so it's going to feel different, and that can feel scary. When we step into something, a pattern that is not familiar to us, it can feel scary. It's like stepping into your first day of kindergarten. Scary. Starting a new job. Scary. Wearing a new outfit that's kind of out there that people aren't used to seeing you in, but you feel so comfortable at home wearing. And for the first time, you're going to step out into public and people are going to see you. You, beyond the facade you might have been putting up for others to see. That can feel scary. But imagine if one woman untangles one inherited pattern. Her children will then inherit a different nervous system. Woo! Just got chills again. Her grandchildren will inherit a different relationship, and future generations will then inherit different possibilities. And that is the magic and the magnitude of generational womb healing. It's not erasing the past. but rather becoming the place where the lineage changes direction. Every breath, every boundary, every act of self-trust, every moment that you choose presence over programming is a new coordinate. And perhaps healing isn't about becoming someone else, but perhaps it's about remembering that the version of you that existed before fear became your inheritance is still alive within you. And that's the work of untangling. That is the work of pattern interruption. And that's where a new lineage begins. So take a few minutes and I'll invite you to write down a couple questions so that you too can maybe interrupt some patterns in your life and maybe untangle some of your own generational trauma or patterning that lives within you. So the first question I'm going to give you to write down or reflect on when you get time is, what pattern am I ready to interrupt? This can be a tough one. It can be overwhelming, like, oh my gosh, I have so many. But give it time. There's no right or wrong answer here. It could be big, it could be small, it could be something you never even thought of until now. What pattern am I ready to interrupt? Whose voice am I still living from? Are you still living from the voice of your mother? Or have you reignited with your voice? Has that voice that was puffed out like a candle being puffed out reignited? Whose voice am I still living from? And what did my nervous system learn before I had words? This is one that if you close your eyes and you ask yourself this, write down the first thing that comes to mind. Let your soul speak. Try not to go into the mind so much with this one. Whatever comes forward first, let that be the truth. What qualities does my future self embody today? What qualities does my future self embody today? Write that down. Get curious. And last one, what is one small choice I can make this week or even this day that aligns with the version of me? What is one small choice I can make this week or today that aligns, unlearns, but aligns with the version of me? So let me know. Reach out. You can find me on social media at beyond_energetics. You can find me at www.healingwithsarah.ca. I would love to hear your answers. I do accept international one-on-one clients. I work in single, triple, or 3-month containers where we dive into your lineage and untangle together so that your lineage can finally rest. If this podcast resonated for you, please share. Please leave a 5-star review, like, subscribe. This helps get the message to other women who might resonate with this work, who might be helped through hearing this message. And other than that, I am so grateful that you are here today. There is a huge resource library over on YouTube under Healing with Sarah. Check it out. I hope you have a great day. Take care.